Rich billionaire sneaks mistress into his private yacht, but pregnant wife shows up unexpectedly. Billionaire Adrian Harrington seemed to have everything: a gleaming empire, the admiration of high society, and a loving wife who was expecting their first child. Yet beneath the polished marble floors of his penthouse and the luxurious deck of his private yacht lurked a betrayal waiting to erupt. Little did Adrian realize how swiftly his life's illusions could shatter. A clandestine trip with his mistress ignites the tinder of suspicion, drawing his pregnant wife, Felicity, into an explosive confrontation under the blazing sun. In this roller coaster of secrets and scandals follow the startling twists as fate exacts its powerful, merciless revenge. Adrian Harrington was born with every advantage life could offer. Heir to the sprawling Harrington family fortune, he inherited a string of luxury hotels scattered across continents, each more lavish than the last. As a child, he had roamed the halls of the Harrington Grand in London, delighting in the echoes of clinking glasses and hushed conversations that took place in the lobby below. Now, in his early 30s, Adrian was not only managing the family empire but expanding it into new realms: shipping, finance, tech startups, and some rumored shady ventures on the side. On a balmy summer night, the private dining room at the Ritz-Carlton in New York glowed with opulent candlelight. Glistening crystal chandeliers rained sparks upon the guests, illuminating the bejeweled throats and wrists of the city's elite. The annual Harrington Foundation Gala was in full swing, a luxurious event designed to show the philanthropic face of the Harrington Empire. Adrian, dressed in a custom-fitted Brioni tuxedo, seemed to glide through the crowd with practiced ease. His deep grey eyes observed everything: the swirl of champagne in crystal flutes, the discreet murmurs of power-laden conversations, and the occasional flash of cameras from the hired photographer. By his side was Felicity Harrington, his wife of 3 years. She was radiant, sporting a flowing evening gown in emerald that offset her chestnut brown hair. Although she was 4 months pregnant, she moved with a graceful poise that Adrian had always admired. Felicity had grown up in a more modest background, a daughter of a middle-class teacher who won a scholarship to study law at an Ivy League school. It was at a university fundraiser that she met Adrian. He was there as a major benefactor, and their connection had sparked immediately. Tonight, Felicity's hand frequently drifted over her small but noticeable baby bump. Friends who came by congratulated her, some teased about her glow, while others made hushed remarks about how Adrian must be thrilled. Adrian would smile in response, politely accepting the well wishes. In truth, fatherhood had once seemed like a distant concept to him, an obligation eventually necessary to continue the Harrington line. Yet seeing Felicity's growing belly tugged at corners of his heart he hadn't realized existed. Deep down, there was a stirring sense of responsibility, even if he sometimes felt overshadowed by the unstoppable momentum of his own ambition. The Harrington Foundation Gala drummed up millions in charitable donations for children's education, just the sort of philanthropic cause that polishes a family name for generations. But beyond the philanthropic sheen, Adrian was restless that evening. He kept checking his phone discreetly, responding to private messages with quick swipes of his thumb. Each alert on his screen, his phone on silent but lighting up sporadically, made him tense. To anyone else, he appeared the consummate host, but inside he was teetering on a precipice of impatience, eager for the night to end. The reason for his distracted state was Cassandra Devereaux, an enchanting socialite he had met in Monte Carlo a few months prior. Cassandra was tall, elegant, and possessed a disarming laugh that belied her sharp intuition. She was a fixture at glamorous events along the French Riviera, known for her flair in forging lucrative connections, and rumored for how quickly she could devour a man's wallet and secrets. Adrian found her confident, worldly, and exciting like the decadent swirl of espresso laced with brandy at the end of a lavish meal. His marriage to Felicity had always been steady, anchored in mutual respect and genuine affection. But somewhere along the line, the quiet stability at home had come to feel too predictable for Adrian's taste. In Cassandra, he discovered the danger and unpredictability he secretly craved. Although guilt danced on the edges of his conscience whenever he glanced at his pregnant wife, Adrian couldn't quell the surge of desire that thoughts of Cassandra triggered. Their affair was still fresh, barely out of the clandestine honeymoon phase, and the stolen moments felt electrifying. She had messaged him that very afternoon, hinting about her boredom and her eagerness for excitement. Adrian, always up for a thrill, had invited her on a spur-of-the-moment getaway aboard his prized super yacht, the Aurora's Embrace, which was currently moored in the port of Monaco. Normally, Adrian would never have risked scheduling such a tryst so close to the gala date, but his mind was awash with rationalizations. He told himself Felicity had been dealing with pregnancy exhaustion and was best left to rest. He convinced himself it was just a quick rendezvous. He would be back before anyone noticed. After all, the Harrington empire seemed so watertight, so bulletproof. He'd orchestrated many expansions, overcame fleeting scandals, and navigated the tabloids like a well-versed politician. Yet he never fully considered how the seeds of betrayal might sprout and twist fate against him. By the time the gala ended and the last of the guests departed, Adrian felt relief flood his veins. Felicity, tired and ready to go home, leaned her head on his shoulder in the limousine. Though he slipped his arm around her shoulders, he found himself thinking about Cassandra, her parted lips, the rustle of her satin dress. He had already planned to leave for Monaco within 48 hours under the guise of critical negotiations with international investors. As for Felicity, he assumed she would be content to stay in New York, preparing for the next round of prenatal checks. He would be back soon enough, with no one the wiser. Or so he believed. Within a day, Adrian had flown out on his private jet. Monaco's warm coastline greeted him as he arrived in the afternoon, the sapphire waters of the Mediterranean seeming to wink under the bright sun. The port was a spectacle of super yachts with white hulls gleaming in the harbour. Yet none drew as many admiring stares as Aurora's Embrace, a masterpiece of modern engineering, 280 feet of sleek design, multiple decks of extravagance, and a helipad perched on its uppermost level. Built by the renowned German shipyard Lürssen, the yacht even boasted an underwater lounge and a glass-bottom swimming pool. Guests stepping aboard often felt like they'd entered a floating 5-star resort. Cassandra arrived later that evening, stepping down the wooden dock toward the yacht's gangway with an effortless poise that reminded Adrian of a catwalk model. Her chestnut hair was braided and twined around her shoulders, her figure hugged by a designer sundress. She greeted Adrian with a smouldering look, leaning in close enough for him to catch a hint of her perfume, a blend of jasmine and subtle spice. The staff on the yacht, meticulously trained and accustomed to their employer's frequent guests, showed no outward reaction beyond polite bows and greetings. Within an hour, they set sail. Champagne corks popped in the lounge. Cassandra kicked off her heels and draped herself across a plush deck chair, letting the ocean breeze tease her hair. Adrian settled beside her, loosening the cuffs of his tailored linen shirt. The tension in him from the last few days between the gala, the swirl of responsibilities, and the guilt that sometimes crept in unannounced, began to thaw under Cassandra's magnetic presence. They whispered about the future, lavish parties in hidden coves, expansions into new markets, hush-hush deals in advanced technologies. Adrian was so enthralled by the illusions of grandeur and passion that he barely noticed the fleeting pang of regret at betraying Felicity. While day melted into dusk, the horizon set ablaze with orange and purple hues. Cassandra danced barefoot on the upper deck to lounge music, swirling her hips in a playful, hypnotic rhythm that drew Adrian in like a riptide. As they sipped wine from crystal goblets, neither gave thought to the storm forming over the horizon, both literally, in the looming dark clouds, and figuratively, in the consequences of their actions. In New York, Felicity Harrington was trying to keep her days filled with positivity. She indulged in prenatal yoga, consulted with her doctor about nutrition and baby milestones, and spent evenings reading up on motherhood tips. Yet something gnawed at her, a persistent worry that she couldn't quite place. Adrian had always been busy, but over the last few months, she noticed subtle changes in his demeanor, the way he guarded his phone more, the extra caution in his expressions if she passed behind him when he was texting. Felicity never wanted to be an overbearing spouse. Trust had always been the foundation of their relationship. But trust can erode when confronted with mounting red flags. One afternoon, as she looked through their shared calendar, she noted an irregularity. Adrian had mentioned a critical meeting with investors in Monaco that would keep him away for a week, possibly 10 days. But when Felicity cross-checked with his executive assistant, purely to relay a schedule of medical appointments, she learned that none of the major Harrington deals required Adrian's on-site presence. In fact, the assistant revealed that all negotiations in Europe had been postponed to the following month. Confusion stamped itself on Felicity's features, quickly transforming into dread. Her concern deepened when she phoned Adrian one evening, at the time he usually returned from dinners with business partners. Instead of hearing the vibrant city noise of Monaco in the background, she picked up on the hum of an engine and what sounded suspiciously like waves lapping. He spoke hurriedly, offering a vague explanation that he was in transit. As soon as she pressed him for details, Adrian swiftly changed the topic, then insisted he had to rush off a call. The next day, a picture turned up on a social media account belonging to one of Monaco's local paparazzi. It showed a woman tall, elegant, hair braided around her shoulders, boarding a yacht that looked eerily like the Aurora's Embrace. The yacht's name wasn't visible in the shot, but the design was unmistakable to anyone intimately familiar with it. Though the photographer had labeled the picture Mystery Beauty Sales in Style, Felicity recognized Cassandra Devereaux at once. The lady had been introduced to them months before in Monte Carlo during a business dinner, though Felicity had barely exchanged a word with her. Back then, she simply found Cassandra's presence to be overbearing. Now, seeing that photo made her stomach churn. Pushing aside her initial wave of nausea that came from a mix of morning sickness and heartbreak, Felicity forced herself to remain composed. She needed more information, more certainty before jumping to conclusions. She called a trusted friend, a woman named Isabella, who managed a small PR firm in Monaco, and asked if she knew anything about the yacht or the rumored occupant. Isabella confirmed, with reluctance, that she had heard whispers Adrian was in town indeed, aboard the Aurora's Embrace. Hushed rumors had circulated about a glamorous socialite seen in close company with him. The final blow was Isabella's gentle warning, "I'm sorry, Felicity. I hate to be the bearer of such news, but you must do something about this. Secrets like these don't stay buried." The blood pounded in Felicity's ears, but she maintained an outward calm. She'd faced adversity before she had worked her way through law school, navigated tough competitions, and refused to bend under pressure. Though the prospect of heartbreak terrified her, she was determined to find out the truth directly from Adrian. No matter what she discovered, she felt she owed it to herself and the unborn child to confront the situation with courage. After a sleepless night, she took a decisive step. Without telling Adrian, Felicity booked a flight to Nice, intending to drive down to Monaco and then board a tender to the Aurora's embrace. It might be an impulsive decision, perhaps even dangerous if the rumors proved true. But she would rather face the storm head-on than suffer in the shadows of suspicion. 2 days later, Felicity arrived on the French Riviera, her heart pounding from a mixture of jet lag and nervous anticipation. She hired a private water taxi at the Port Hercule in Monaco. The harbour was bustling with staff, hustling to refuel yachts, tourists snapping pictures, and the occasional swirl of paparazzi hoping to catch a glimpse of celebrities. Felicity kept a low profile, wearing oversized sunglasses and a simple navy blue maxi dress that concealed her pregnancy bump fairly well. As the water taxi wove through the port, Felicity caught sight of the Aurora's embrace anchored a short distance away, its sleek lines glinting in the sunlight. She had only been on the yacht a handful of times before. Each visit was a memory of romantic dinners under the stars or lazy afternoons in the jacuzzi where she and Adrian had dreamt of their future family. Now, seeing the ship floating so serenely while her emotions raged made her breath catch in her throat. Meanwhile, aboard Aurora's embrace, Cassandra lounged in a bikini on the upper deck, enjoying a cocktail while Adrian, wearing casual linen trousers and a crisp white shirt, closed a phone call with the same forced courtesy he'd used on Felicity. The tension in him was palpable. He had begun to feel uneasy, more so since the paparazzi's lens had snapped him and Cassandra a few days before. If Felicity caught wind of this, there would be repercussions. Still, Adrian had convinced himself that the risk was manageable. He had an array of PR strategies to spin narratives, a small legal team that specialized in hush-hush payoffs, and his formidable fortune to maintain illusions. He just needed to wrap up this tryst, indulge in the excitement a bit longer, then return to his wife and salvage normalcy. Or at least, that was the plan. Suddenly, the helmsman informed Adrian that a small water taxi was approaching. At first, he thought it might be another business acquaintance, or perhaps a courier. He made his way to the deck rail, only to see Felicity step off the taxi and onto the lowered swim platform. For a moment he froze, panic lancing through him. Cassandra, alerted by the helmsman as well, emerged to peer down from the upper deck, her eyes widening. "Adrian," Felicity said as he rushed to meet her, "what is going on?" She wasn't yelling, but her voice was taut with heartbreak and anger. She removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes that glistened with tears she struggled to hold back. Adrian's staff, trained to remain discreet, looked away and pretended not to hear the confrontation, but the tension on deck was thick enough to taste. Felicity's gaze flicked upward where Cassandra stood, an exotic silhouette against the sky, wearing nothing but a bikini wrap. Even at a glance, the woman's presence on the yacht confirmed Felicity's worst fears. The pressure in Felicity's chest rose, and for a moment, she thought she might faint. She steadied herself by gripping the rail, refusing to be seen as weak in this crucial moment. Adrian's voice was low, trembling with a mixture of guilt and irritation. "Felicity, you shouldn't be here," he said. "I can explain." She let out a hollow laugh. "Explain what?" "That you're on a romantic getaway with another woman while I'm home pregnant with our child. Is there any explanation in the world that makes this all right?" Cassandra, perhaps sensing the drama was about to spiral, retreated to the main salon, giving them a semblance of privacy, though she lingered near the tinted windows to watch. Adrian tried to lower his voice, though emotion threatened to crack it. He reached out to touch Felicity's arm, but she jerked it away. "It's not what it looks like." Adrian lied automatically, aware of how pathetic it sounded. "Cassandra is just a friend." Felicity's laughter was bitter. "Friends don't parade around in bikinis on your private yacht while your pregnant wife is halfway across the world. Do you think I'm stupid?" He glanced around helplessly. Let's just go inside and talk. We don't have to do this here, in front of the crew. Felicity shook her head, tears beginning to slip from the corners of her eyes. I'm going to get the truth out of you, Adrian, one way or another, and I don't care who hears it anymore. A hush fell over the yacht, as if even the sea was holding its breath. Felicity allowed Adrian to steer her toward the owner's suite. The large interior, which had once felt like a luxurious sanctuary, now felt like a hollow stage for the final act of a dreadful play. She sank into a sofa, her shoulders squared as she fixed her husband with a look that demanded answers. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, pacing anxiously. Felicity, please, sit down. I am sitting, she replied icily. Now speak. His eyes darted to her midsection, and a wave of guilt threatened to drown him. There she was, carrying his child, and he was entangled with another woman. He inhaled shakily. It started a few months ago, he admitted. Cassandra and IWE were drawn to each other. It was an impulsive mistake. Mistake? Felicity repeated. It looks more like a continued affair to me. Adrian couldn't deny it. I didn't know how to stop, he mumbled, hating how cowardly he sounded. She offered excitement. Everything with you and the baby started to feel so overwhelming. Felicity's anger flared. So your solution is to escape with another woman? Do you realize what this is doing to me, what this could do to our child? He winced. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I lost my head. Pain radiated through Felicity's chest. Every breath hurt like a shard of glass. And what about our child? Do they deserve a father who can't stay faithful for even a few months? He dropped onto a chair, burying his face in his hands. He wanted to protest that he was a good man, that he cared for his unborn child. But was he truly good if he had so little self-control? While the couple argued, the yacht's radar began picking up signs of an incoming storm front. Dark clouds gathered, the wind picking up speed. The captain alerted Adrian that the weather was turning foul and that they should probably head back to port for safety. Adrian, still too wrapped up in the confrontation, told the captain to hold position for a while longer, intending to resolve the crisis with Felicity first. Suddenly, Cassandra appeared in the doorway, draped in a silk robe. Her posture was tense, indicating she wasn't sure if she should stay hidden or insert herself. Felicity's gaze snapped to her with a fury that made Cassandra's confidence waver. For a moment, Cassandra stood frozen. She had faced society's scorn before, but never quite like this. Adrian whipped around, annoyance crossing his features. "This is between my wife and me," he said curtly. "Give us some space." Cassandra's lips tightened. "I just wanted to see if everything was all right." "It's not," Felicity cut in, her voice cold. "But you know that." Cassandra's cheeks reddened, but her eyes held a defiance, as if to say, "We're not done here either." Without a word, she left the suite, footsteps echoing through the corridors. With tension nearly tangible in the air, Felicity turned her attention back to Adrian. "End it," she demanded. "Right now, in front of me." He exhaled shakily. "Felicity, please, end it," she repeated, fury making her voice tremble. "Or I end us. Our marriage. Everything." Adrian stood, heart pounding. Part of him wanted to salvage his marriage, to do the right thing, but the lure of Cassandra was still strong, a symbol of escape, excitement, and rebellion. But what kind of father could he be if he couldn't put his family first? After a taut silence, he nodded. "I'll talk to her." "No," Felicity hissed. "I will be there. I want to see you make this choice with my own eyes." Adrian led the way down to the main salon, where Cassandra stood near a marble-topped bar, sipping a drink and looking at the storm clouds gathering outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. The lights inside glowed, reflecting on the glass, creating ghostly images of the trio converging for a showdown. Her face was guarded, but she forced a breezy tone. "Felicity, I'm sorry you had to find out like this, but sometimes relationships run their course and don't you dare talk about our marriage as if it's some casual fling," Felicity snapped. "You have no idea what we've been through." Cassandra rolled her eyes. "I'm well aware of what I want, and it's Adrian. You two haven't been happy for a while, and he deserves more than a life of stale domesticity." At that, Felicity nearly lunged forward, but Adrian stepped between them. "Cassandra," he began, voice shaking. "We're done. This was a mistake." She looked at him with a mixture of shock and anger. "Wait, you're making a choice just because she showed up. How weak are you?" Adrian swallowed. "She's my wife. We're having a baby." "I can't, coward," Cassandra spat, slamming her drink onto the bar. "You lured me out here with promises. You said she didn't understand you, that you felt suffocated. Now you just snap your fingers and expect me to vanish?" Felicity observed the exchange with a cold sense of vindication. She wanted to see him break it off unequivocally, to know this affair wouldn't continue once she was gone. Adrian's face was contorted with stress. "It's over," he said. "This can't continue. I'll ensure you're taken care of financially, but I'm going back to my wife." Cassandra let out a bitter laugh. "Of course you'd try to buy me off. Typical. I guess that's the Harrington way. But don't think I'm leaving empty-handed. I have enough texts, photos and recordings to make a scandal you'll never recover from." He paled. "You wouldn't," she shrugged. "Try me. I know your secrets, and I also know how to leak them." Before the confrontation could escalate further, the captain's voice boomed over the yacht's intercom. "Mr. Harrington, we need to head back. The storm is intensifying quickly, and conditions are becoming dangerous." Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating Cassandra's defiant expression and Felicity's tearful fury. Thunder rolled in the distance, and the wind rattled the yacht's structure. Adrian glanced at Felicity, then at Cassandra, torn between his crumbling illusions and the reality that was about to swallow him whole. "All of you go to your cabins," the captain continued. "Urgent. We're turning around." Felicity felt a surge of exhaustion wash over her. She was pregnant, emotionally battered, and reeling from the betrayal. The sudden threat of a violent storm on the open sea only amplified her sense that the world was spinning out of control. Adrian reached for her elbow. "Let me take you to a safe part of the ship." She yanked her arm away. "Don't touch me," she spat, her eyes brimming with tears. But as the yacht lurched under a strong wave, she stumbled. Reluctantly, she let Adrian steady her. Together, they made their way through the corridor, while Cassandra stormed off in the opposite direction, presumably to gather her things. Rain hammered the decks, and thunder rattled the windows. The Aurora's embrace rocked violently as the captain steered toward the harbor. Lightning illuminated the sky like the final flickers of a grand stage show, highlighting the drama of three souls in turmoil. Felicity was guided into one of the guest suites. Adrian hovered by the door, uncertain whether to speak or leave. She sank onto the bed, clutching her abdomen protectively, her breath coming in ragged bursts. He knelt beside her, conflicting emotions etched into his features. "Felicity, please," he murmured, voice thick. "I'm sorry. Let me help." Her tears were silent. "You've done enough," she whispered, refusing to meet his gaze. "I can't even look at you right now. The best help you can offer is to give me space." Adrian rose, wrestling with shame and regret. He left the suite, stepping into a corridor that flickered under emergency lighting. The yacht's stabilizers strained against the raging sea. Adrian made his way to the bridge, where the captain shouted instructions to the crew. Sheets of rain battered the windows, but through the storm's ferocity, Adrian spotted the faint lights of the harbor. Relief mingled with dread. He couldn't hide from the consequences once they docked. Meanwhile, Cassandra clung to a railing near the main salon, her robe flapping in the storm's tempest. She was furious and unsteady. It wasn't supposed to end like this. She'd envisioned herself becoming the new Mrs. Harrington, or at least stepping into a lavish arrangement that would secure her future. Now, the storm churned around her, mirroring her own rage at being cast aside so dismissively. She considered confronting Adrian again, but a violent sway of the yacht sent her stumbling across the wet deck. Reality forced her to realize that no matter how angry she was, survival came first in that moment. At last, the Aurora's Embrace entered the harbor. Mooring lines were tossed, staff shouting commands to secure the massive vessel. The ramp was lowered. Felicity, pale-faced and trembling, was helped off the yacht by a crew member. She refused Adrian's hand, ignoring his pleas. Cassandra, still furious and refusing to be overshadowed, marched past him, turning her head away in contempt when he tried to speak. A small crowd of onlookers had gathered, partly because of the storm, partly out of curiosity for who might be disembarking this high-profile superyacht in such dramatic weather. Cameras from persistent paparazzi flashed, capturing glimpses of Adrian Harrington standing in the pouring rain, his hair plastered to his forehead, his expression desperate. Felicity, soaked but composed, quickly ducked into a waiting car with tinted windows. Cassandra, in her robe and carrying a designer handbag, hurried off to find her own transportation, but not before some paparazzi shouted intrusive questions about her identity. Adrian was left standing on the pier, drenched, stormwater seeping into his expensive loafers. He felt the electric shock of cameras capturing his humiliation. Even the heavens raged against him tonight. Something in the pit of his stomach churned with fear. Cassandra had threatened to expose him, and Felicity seemed determined to leave him. The magnitude of his choices weighed upon him like an anchor, dragging him to the depths. The scandal exploded faster than Adrian could have imagined. By the time he made it back to his suite in Monaco, notifications flooded his phone. A tabloid had snagged a photo of him alongside Cassandra on the yacht a few days before, but now there were new photos, Felicity arriving unexpectedly, the confrontation in the storm and the tense departure. Gossip sites buzzed with speculation that the pregnant Mrs. Harrington had discovered her husband's affair mid-voyage. Adrian's PR team scrambled to contain the fallout, issuing carefully worded statements about business misunderstandings and private family matters. But it was futile. Cassandra gave a paid interview to a notorious European tabloid, painting Adrian as a manipulative billionaire who had strung her along with lavish gifts and emotional promises. She released partial text transcripts suggesting that Adrian had confided in her about the claustrophobia he felt in his marriage and even questioned whether he was ready for fatherhood. Though some texts were selectively edited, the damage was done. Morally outraged social media users dragged Adrian's name through the mud. Meanwhile, Felicity fled to London to stay with her mother. Exhausted and heartbroken, she refused to see Adrian. He tried calling, texting, emailing, even resorting to flower deliveries, red roses, by the hundreds, only for them to be refused at the doorstep. She demanded space, focusing on her health and the baby's well-being. Her personal doctor in London assured her that the baby was fine physically, but Felicity's emotional stress was tangible. 1 week later, with the media frenzy at a peak, Felicity agreed to meet Adrian in her mother's modest living room. She wore a simple black dress. Her eyes, though red from tears, were steely. "I'll grant you one chance to speak," she said, "but that doesn't mean I'm prepared to forgive you." Adrian swallowed hard. "Thank you," he whispered. He took a seat on the couch across from her. "Felicity, I let my temptations get the better of me. I broke our vows. I was selfish, arrogant, and too wrapped up in my own desires to see what was truly important." He paused, tears brimming in his eyes. "I know saying sorry isn't enough, but I am sorry." She lowered her gaze. "I never thought we'd be here. We had promises, Adrian promises of building a family, a life together. I know," he said, voice cracking. "I know I've shattered your trust, but I still love you, Felicity. I want to be a father to our child. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes." She studied him quietly. The old Felicity, the one who believed wholeheartedly in love, might have jumped into his arms. But now she had to think of her unborn child first. "I need time," she finally said. "And if we do move forward, you're going to have to prove yourself in ways you never have before: therapy, marriage counseling, a full admission of your affair without excuses. Do you understand?" Adrian nodded fervently. Yes, anything. But as much as Felicity wanted to believe him, part of her remained guarded. She had scheduled an appointment with a divorce lawyer for the following week. She told Adrian as much, explaining that the outcome of that appointment hinged on whether she believed he was truly committed to change. Outside, paparazzi still lurked, and tabloid headlines continued to churn. Cassandra's story began losing traction only when the media found new prey in another celebrity scandal. The Harrington brand, once polished to a brilliant sheen, saw noticeable drops in stock prices, especially in its publicly traded arms. Analysts on financial networks debated whether the scandal indicated deeper mismanagement or personal instability from Adrian that could affect investor confidence. Board members voiced their concerns. For the first time since Adrian took the reins, there were quiet murmurs about installing a new CEO, perhaps a caretaker from within the Harrington circle, or even an external executive who could restore trust. A month passed. Adrian immersed himself in damage control, hiring crisis managers who specialized in corporate and personal reputations. The brand's philanthropic endeavors were accelerated. New donations rolled out to children's hospitals, environmental causes, and scholarship funds. Some in the public viewed these gestures with skepticism, labeling them nothing more than attempts to buy back a tarnished image. Others were more forgiving, believing in the philanthropic legacy of the Harrington name. Over time, some of the scandal's heat dissipated. The tabloids moved on to fresher gossip. Behind the scenes, though, Adrian fought a quiet battle to remain at the helm of his own empire. Dissenting voices among the board questioned his judgment, citing the fiasco with Cassandra as proof he lacked the discipline to uphold the Harrington family's sterling reputation. Some shareholders threatened to pull out if a more stable figure wasn't placed in charge. Meanwhile, rumors circulated that Cassandra had acquired partial knowledge of certain high-risk deals or questionable financial maneuvers that Adrian had undertaken to expand the empire. One whispered rumor suggested she might leak incriminating documents if not appeased. Adrian's father, who had stepped back from active management years ago due to health issues, summoned his son for a stern meeting. In a private corner office overlooking London's skyline, the patriarch confronted Adrian with a folder of evidence that the crisis management team had uncovered traces of hush money payments, shady offshore accounts. "Do you realize what you've done?" the older man said, voice trembling with controlled anger. "You've jeopardized everything our family built over a century, all for a fling." Adrian rubbed his temples. "I never meant for it to go so far. You have to believe me." "What I believe," his father said icily, "is that you're not fit to lead us through this crisis. The board is calling for you to step down as CEO for at least 6 months. They want a caretaker to stabilize operations. And if you fight this, you'll lose, because I'll side with them." It felt like a punch to Adrian's gut. His father had always been a guiding presence, but he had never threatened to remove Adrian from the empire's leadership. For a moment, panic seized him. His identity was so entwined with being the man in charge, the unstoppable visionary. But here he was, reeling under the consequences of his own indulgence and betrayal. By the time Adrian left that meeting, he knew he was cornered. He could protest, but it would almost certainly result in the board forcing him out entirely. Or he could step aside voluntarily, preserve some dignity, and potentially reclaim the CEO role once the dust settled, if it ever did. As Adrian's career hung in limbo, Felicity's pregnancy advanced. One chilly afternoon, she was startled by the first robust kicks of the baby. The movement within her stirred a complex mix of emotions, tenderness, and hope for the life growing inside her, pain and anger at the father who had caused her so much grief. She and Adrian maintained contact, mostly through carefully worded phone calls. He had started individual therapy, along with couples counseling sessions they did remotely. She could sense, through his tone, that he was struggling with the shame of losing his empire, but also that he was making a genuine effort to change. After weeks of introspection, Felicity decided to see him in person again, this time with a marriage counselor present. The session took place at an upscale therapy office near Hyde Park in London. Adrian arrived early, wearing a simple black sweater and jeans, his hair unkempt, his face drawn. He looked older than his 33 years, burdened by regrets. When Felicity walked in, he stood, momentarily unsure whether to hug her or wait. She offered no immediate gesture, so they settled in armchairs around a low glass table. The counselor guided them through a series of exercises, prompting Adrian to express why he had strayed, and Felicity to voice the extent of her hurt. The conversation was raw, tears spilled from both sides, and at times Felicity thought she might walk out. But she stayed, motivated by the child she carried and the small spark of love that refused to die. Over time, the counselor directed them to chart out a path forward, trust-building measures, open communication, scheduled therapy sessions. Adrian would formally step down from the CEO role, prove he could manage a normal life without constant ego stroking from business conquests. Felicity, for her part, had to decide whether she was ready to see him as more than a traitor to their marriage. In the end, they agreed to try. It wouldn't be easy, and Felicity reserved the right to pursue a divorce if Adrian faltered. But at least a door, once slammed shut, was now cracked open. Months slipped by, winter giving way to spring. Adrian fulfilled his pledge. He stepped down as CEO, handing the reins temporarily to a seasoned executive named Owen Blackwood, a long-time confidant of the Harrington family. While Adrian's professional life was in flux, he channeled his energy into personal growth. He met regularly with a therapist, confronted latent insecurities, and began volunteering at various charity functions in a more hands-on capacity, something he had never done before, preferring in the past to simply cut large checks. Cassandra, meanwhile, found her 15 minutes of infamy slipping away. Her sensational story grew stale, eclipsed by the next wave of celebrity and political scandals. The hush money or settlement she had hoped to secure from Adrian never materialized. His lawyers countered her blackmail attempts with defamation countersuits, draining her resources. In a fit of desperation, she sold a final interview for a paltry sum, spinning a new angle about unkept promises and heartbreak. But by then, the public had largely moved on. She eventually retreated into obscurity, presumably to latch onto another powerful man's orbit. Felicity focused on her pregnancy, leaning on her mother and a network of close friends. Gradually, she permitted Adrian a greater presence in her life, attending doctor's appointments, preparing a nursery. They weren't living together yet. Felicity insisted she needed space for her own emotional well-being. Adrian respected that boundary, grateful for any opportunity to be part of the process. As her due date approached, Felicity encountered a medical complication. Her blood pressure was elevated, and the doctors warned her about preeclampsia. The concern escalated as she neared the final weeks. One late night, her condition flared dangerously, and she was rushed to the hospital. Adrian, alerted by Felicity's mother, rushed across the city, heart pounding. Finding Felicity in a hospital bed, hooked to monitors, with doctors bustling about, made him fear he might lose everything that truly mattered. The doctors decided on an emergency delivery, performing a C-section to protect both mother and child. Adrian, though terrified, was by her side through it all, holding her hand, whispering reassurances. The baby, a boy, was born prematurely but healthy enough to let out a feeble cry that brought tears to their eyes. Felicity, exhausted and under the influence of anesthesia, managed a wan smile as Adrian kissed her forehead. In that moment, the enormity of fatherhood crashed over Adrian like a tidal wave. All the scandal, the business fiascos, the ephemeral temptations, none of it seemed significant next to the tiny life that now clung to him for safety. A wave of love, responsibility, and gratitude flooded him. With the birth of their son, James Harrington, a new chapter began. Felicity spent the next few weeks recovering, and Adrian took on responsibilities that once would have seemed beneath him, changing diapers, staying up through the night to soothe a colicky infant, learning lullabies from online tutorials. Each time he cradled James, he felt anew the weight of his misdeeds, how he had nearly thrown away this precious bond for a fleeting affair. Yet karma had one more surprise. Even though Adrian was reorienting his personal life, the financial repercussions of his scandal began to finalize. Owen Blackwood discovered that in the months Adrian had been juggling his affair, certain expansions were funded with precarious loans that left parts of the Harrington portfolio vulnerable. Adrian's abrupt departure from the CEO position caused a lack of investor confidence, and a chain reaction led to the collapse of a few major deals, draining millions. Lawsuits ensued from partners who claimed the Harrington Group had reneged on contractual obligations. Though the family fortune was far from destroyed, it took a substantial hit, forcing the sale of some prized assets, including Aurora's Embrace. The yacht that had been the stage for Adrian's betrayal went up for auction, purchased at a fraction of its original worth by an anonymous buyer. Watching the images of Aurora's Embrace being towed away brought a bittersweet pang to Adrian's heart. Part of him mourned the loss of that symbol of luxury, but another part felt relief. The yacht had come to represent his darkest mistakes. Perhaps letting it go was the final step in moving forward. When the dust finally settled, Adrian had lost his role as CEO, at least indefinitely, and the empire was smaller, more consolidated. He faced ongoing legal battles to resolve the financial fallout, racking up enormous legal fees. The tabloids once again circled around the news that the Harrington family had auctioned off cherished assets, linking it to Adrian's scandal. The commentary was brutal, casting him as a cautionary tale of how personal failings could topple an empire. This indeed was the hard karma he had invoked, but through it all, one beacon of hope remained: Felicity and baby James. In the quiet nights, as Felicity dozed in bed and James lay sleeping in his crib, Adrian would slip into the rocking chair. He'd watch the infant's tiny chest rise and fall, and he'd silently vow to do better, to be the husband and father they deserved. Felicity, for her part, saw the changes in him. Though trust could not be rebuilt overnight, the cracks in their relationship were slowly being mended by shared moments of joy with their child. She had not yet decided if she would stay with Adrian permanently, or if, after a certain point, she might walk away. But her heart was not as hardened as it had been. Some days She allowed herself to imagine a future where Adrian truly redeemed himself. Finally, about 6 months after the scandal broke, Felicity agreed to move back into their London townhouse with baby James. They set clear boundaries, continued therapy, and began the arduous process of forming a new normal. Felicity, determined to remain financially independent, took on part-time consulting work for a law firm, refusing to rely solely on the Harrington name. Adrian respected her wishes, focusing on healing the family's finances in smaller, more ethically transparent ways. He no longer indulged in any illusions of grandeur. The affair was a sobering reminder that everything he had taken for granted could vanish with a single poor choice. Late one evening, after Felicity finished feeding James and put him down to sleep, she found Adrian in the living room, surrounded by papers. They were documents related to philanthropic plans, a foundation for single mothers, a scholarship fund for disadvantaged youth. He looked up, a glimmer of earnestness in his eyes. "I've been thinking," he began. "I want to focus on giving back, not just to repair my image, but to use our resources in a way that actually makes a difference." Felicity took a deep breath, absorbing the sincerity in his tone. "That's admirable," she said quietly. "I hope it's real." He nodded. "It is. I've learned the hard way that money and power mean nothing if you can't respect and care for the people who matter." She studied him for a long moment, then sat beside him, placing her hand over his. "Then let's see how this new chapter unfolds, Adrian. For James, for us, but especially for you to become the man you claim you want to be." In that silent exchange, an understanding passed between them, fragile but genuine. Their love had been tested by betrayal, battered by a scandal that shook their empire, and tempered by the forces of karmic retribution. Yet it still flickered, perhaps a testament that second chances are possible if both hearts are willing to work for it. And so our tale of betrayal, heartbreak, and redemption draws to a close. Adrian Harrington discovered that wealth cannot shield one from the unforgiving consequences of deceit. A secret affair on the shimmering decks of his private yacht nearly cost him everything: his wife, his unborn child, his empire, and his dignity. Felicity, with her unwavering resilience, bravely faced the storm and confronted the truth, ultimately forging a cautious new bond where trust would need to be rebuilt, brick by fragile brick. Though Adrian's fortune and reputation were deeply shaken, the greatest wealth he found was the chance to embrace fatherhood and strive to become a better man. Thank you for listening to this dramatic saga of lies, love, and the unexpected twists of karma. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button, share it with friends, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping tales. Your support keeps us inspired to bring you more storytelling adventures.